Here is the accusation. Jesus went around preaching the end of the world, right?
Was Jesus a failed apocalyptic prophet? Or the most accurate but most misunderstood prophet of all time?
This end of the world was supposed to come during that generation, and the Jewish generation is considered approximately 40 years.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Well, Jesus probably didn't go around singing it like a musical, but obviously the end of the world has not happened. And we can take the easy button and label Jesus a false prophet, or we can allow the integrity of Jesus to remain and look at our own interpretation of the text. That seems more appropriate.
If Jesus was preaching the imminent end of the world, does that make him a false prophet? So this is going to be fun, I think.
But before we go there, let's take a look at what one of the popular critics, scholars, and authors has to say about this topic.
That Jesus is best understood. He was specifically an apocalyptic prophet who was anticipating that the world as we know it was soon to end with an intervention of God. That prediction of Jesus did not come true, and so how could it be right?
The foundation has been laid by this critic and secular scholar. The term false prophet is used, and the apocalyptic prophet is the accusation of what Jesus predicted, which was the end of the world, and it did not come. Therefore, he says that Jesus is not truthful and that he was wrong. In this next part, the professor allows that placing this false prophet label on Jesus is not the best term to apply to someone that cannot be questioned. However, since he stated that Jesus is best known as an apocalyptic prophet and that he was wrong, he is tiptoeing around the label.
What I will say is that I think it is clear that Jesus was predicting that the end was going to come within his generation. I think Jesus did anticipate that this was going to happen within his generation, and it did not happen. And so he was wrong about that.
Ouch! That is a pretty bold statement. If you're going to accuse Jesus of being a false prophet, or at least imply that he is by stating that he is wrong, you better make sure you investigate every angle possible to ensure that you are accurate in what you're professing.
I think he was mistaken. But I don't like the term false prophet for that. I think I prefer to think of it as a calendrical mistake. You got the calendar wrong.
Just off by a few millennia.
He's off by a few millennia.
Was Jesus really prophesying the end of the world or the end of the age?
The first thing to notice is that Jesus gave the Olivet Discourse likely around 30 to 33 AD. Adding a Jewish generation to that would put the timing of the event right around 70 AD. So what happens if we apply the 40-year Jewish generation to the context of the Olivet Discourse? We have 30 plus 40, it lands us at 70 years. And what do we know happened in 70 AD? We know the Roman army surrounded Jerusalem and the temple was about to be destroyed. So when Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, speaking to his disciples about the temple about to be destroyed, about the stones that were going to fall down, that is the appropriate context to be applied here. And if we project onto the story this end of the world language when it was specifically talking about the end of the age, we end up in situations like this where we're teaching false teachings. You would think that critical scholars would be open about this discrepancy, right, and address it. We have a discrepancy of end of the age or end of the world language, okay? Which is it? They nitpick everything else, so why not? Why hone in on the end of the world language to try to label Jesus a false prophet? You wouldn't do that unless there was an agenda. If the critics here know that there's a difference, the end of the world versus the end of the age, which can mean completely different things, and they do not disclose it, it questions their intellectual integrity. Otherwise, it seems like selective data framing to fit a narrative.
Jesus has been framed.
The Greek phrase in Matthew 24:3 is sonteleos tu aianos, and sonteleos means completion, consummation, or conclusion, and aeon is age, era, or epoch. Therefore, the correct understanding of Matthew 24:3 is the completion, the consummation, conclusion, or end of an age.
When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Matthew 24:3.
The word for world in Greek would normally be cosmos, world. Strictly speaking, the original Greek says end of the age, not the end of the world. The King James Version translates the Olivet Discourse in Matthew as meaning the end of the world. But this is not in error because of the King James. It is because we have an inaccurate understanding of the language. In 1611, the English word world often meant age or era, not the physical planet exploding and the end of the world. The Old English word that nobody speaks or understands today was we a-rolled or were-rolled, which later meant world it was translated to. It originally meant the age of man, which is similar to the Jewish generation. Also meant lifetime, carrying the connotation of a specific era or human existence. It was the compound of the word were, meaning man or human, and eld, meaning age or old. So when they compiled the King James Version, they were using an English word that still retained the older semantic overlap with age. In 1611, English world could legitimately mean era or present order. Okay, advancing from 1611 Old English to today, we have apostate professors that are very intelligent, who know Greek. They know the Greek language, they were fundamentalists, and now they are showing signs that they retain their fundamentalism because they insist that Jesus here means end of the world, yet they know from their Greek understanding and background that it is the aeon, it is the end of the age. And it is interesting that it's only Matthew that records the end of the age language, specifically using the word aeon. Luke and Mark just jump right into the Olivet Discourse and the temple destruction. Luke even says, hey, you can flee the end of the world by fleeing to the mountains. And what do we know from Eusebius? That this is in fact what the disciples did. They fled to the mountains to escape the end of the world.
When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation has come near. Then those in Judea must flee to the mountains, and those inside the city must leave it, and those out in the country must not enter it.
Another thing that these secular critical scholars do is conveniently leave out all the apocalyptic hyperbole that is prevalent throughout the Old Covenant language. There are many events where this language of the stars falling, the moon going dark, and the sun burning up, all that language is prevalent throughout the Old Testament. You can spend a couple minutes on AI and debunk all this stuff from the critical scholars that want to frame the false narrative, the narrative that Jesus was a false prophet and is focused on the end of the world, and ignore the apocalyptic hyperbole.
Jesus gave one of the most precisely fulfilled large-scale prophecies in history in the first part of the Olivet Discourse, and he explicitly told us the second part remains open. The false prophet claim is not a serious scholarly option anymore. It is a recycled 19th century trope that refuses to engage the primary data. Grok AI.
There are many Day of the Lord judgments throughout the Old Covenant. Check it out. Textually, the end of the age is unquestionably the original Greek meaning. Contextually, this is very likely referring to the end of the temple age, the close of the Old Covenant order, the transition into the fully revealed Messianic era that was expected to come. Another thing you will see from these critics is they will smash all the coming language events together. There are many comings. There are Day of the Lord comings, which I mentioned, prevalent throughout the Old Covenant. There is a Daniel 7 coming where the Son of Man is coming in the clouds of heaven, in heaven, to the Ancient of Days, where he receives all the power and glory and dominion and all that. So there are many coming. They will insert the word second into these coming languages and say, oh, that's about the second coming, where it's not.
And I would argue that it is the consensus view that the Olivet Discourse represents Jesus' second coming.
The word second, Greek deuteros, does not appear in any of the Olivet Discourse passages in the Synoptic Gospels in reference to the return of Jesus. This scholar operates from a dogmatic framework, often appealing to a scholarly consensus that primarily reflects a narrow circle of critics. Paradoxically, he engages in the very practice he critiques in others, interpolating terms that are absent from the original text.
Wes is not only altering, but also adding to the passage.
Okay, they get away with it, but where others, they accuse others of inserting words into Scripture, but they can do it all they want if it's coming from secular scholarship. Alright, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much. I really appreciate you subscribing and liking this video. We need to combat this narrative that Jesus is a false prophet. And these people that are spitting this narrative, this false narrative, they have many more views and followers than I do. So that would help very much. Thank you. To bring this home, we have shown you what the popular critics who get many clicks think. These highly educated people should know this is a false accusation. It makes you wonder, why imply that Jesus is a false end-of-the-world prophet? One good reason would be profit, money. Controversy sells books and gets many followers. Oh, yeah. Okay, I've shown you what the original Greek understanding would be regarding the end of the age. The right-on-time predictions of the Jewish generation landing on 70 AD, how the original Old English readers would have understood this, and when applying the many coming events associated with Jesus, the apocalyptic hyperbole, to the correct context, even AI tools agree this accusation is, quote, not a serious scholarly option anymore, end quote. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. In the future videos, we're going to look at all these coming Day of the Lord events throughout the Old Covenant. And we'll look at 70 AD and what happened surrounding the events related to Jerusalem. And what did Josephus say about these events? He was a historian and wrote about a lot of these events. We'll also examine further Daniel 7 and the coming, the ascension, the coming in the clouds of heaven, the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days. So I hope you enjoyed this, and please, again, hit subscribe and like, and stick around for future videos. Thank you.